If you're planning on buying real estate here in Montana, there are many things you need to know. In this video, I'm going to cover 7 things that you really need to look into and research before you buy here. So a lot of people are looking to move to Montana to get away from the big cities and the crowds, and one of the things they're not thinking about that we have up here are pretty harsh winters sometimes. Here in western Montana, we don't get the real bitter cold a lot, but we get tons of snow. And as you can see, the road behind me is a gravel road, and a lot of these roads aren't maintained by the city or the county. So it's up to you to either maintain your own road or driveway and make sure you don't slide off of it. We do allow studded tires here because there is so much freezing and thawing that if you don't have studs on your tires or really good winter tires, you're going to slide right off these roads. These roads aren't maintained by anyone, so it's totally up to you. So if you're out here in the middle of the wilderness and you go off the road, you're either walking a long way or hoping somebody drives by. So keep that in mind when you're looking for property that's way out. And if you're looking for it in the middle of summer, you may not think of that, and a lot of people don't, but you need to strongly consider that before you buy a property way out here in the wilderness. We do get tons of snow here in the winter, which a lot of people aren't that aware of, or they're not used to that much snow. So if you're not into shoveling and sometimes having to clean off your roof because of the amount of snow, it's another thing to keep in mind. Up at the ski resort in Whitefish, they get over 400 inches a year. Now that's at the top of a mountain, but even down lower here in the valley or in lower areas in the wilderness, you're still going to get tons of snow. So if you're not into shoveling or plowing, you may want to take that into consideration before buying a property way out in the woods. The last thing that people don't realize here is the darkness we get in the winter. We're on the far western side of the mountain time zone, so in the summer it's great because we get almost an extra hour of light. It seems like it's light until almost 11 o'clock at night. But in the winter, that's the opposite. The days are very short. It doesn't get light until almost 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's starting to get dark already by 4:30. So very short days. It's one of the things that people don't realize. They come up here and visit in the summer and think that it's light all the time, but they don't think about in the winter, it's the exact opposite. So if you're not into short days, you may want to also consider that before buying a property up here. The next thing people need to keep in mind is the internet service. A lot of people want to move up here and work remotely, and they want a place way out in the middle of the woods like this to just sit and do their job remotely, but the internet service here is spotty at best, especially in areas like this. We do now have Starlink, but there's no guarantee that Starlink's going to cover the area that you're looking in, so you really need to check into that. Starlink is not available to everyone yet. They're working on it, but it's still a long way to go. And I know people that are at this moment still on waiting lists to get it. And it doesn't cover every single area of Montana. So something to check into as well if you're thinking about moving up here so you can work remotely. We don't have great internet in some of these areas. There are some quirks about Montana, like up in Eureka, they have fiber optic, which is weird because in the Flathead Valley, which is much bigger, not everybody has fiber. So I guess it was one of those things where they got it put in early as a small town grant. So there are some areas with fiber, but most of the time if you're buying out in areas like this, the internet's not going to be great. So you may want to check into that before you buy a piece of property way out here in the woods. So a lot of people moving to Montana want to live on the water, and if you choose a river to live on, some of the things you need to know are the Montana stream laws and the fact that people can use this river whenever they want. There's no such thing as buying your own private river here in Montana. So as you can see, people use these rivers here in Montana all the time, and if you own property right on the shore it's not your private river and people can do this all day long. They can fish, they can raft, swim, whatever they want to do. You don't own down into the river, you own to the high water mark, which means that people can also dock their boats right here, right along the river, even though it might be in your backyard. So if you're coming up here thinking you're going to buy your own private little stream or river, it's not really going to happen. Just be aware that people can use this, and it's good. I mean, everybody loves it here that you can use the rivers, and but if you're coming up here thinking you're going to buy your private river, there was a previous video that I did where I explained this more in depth, but there's different classes of rivers and there's different rules that apply to each class of river. So if you are buying on a river, you need to look this over or watch the video that I did previously and find out, do your homework and make sure you're understanding what goes into living here on a river. If you're going to buy on a lake, there's rules that apply to that as well. As you can see, these docks here, docks and shoreline are all controlled by the different towns, by the state. So if you're going to build a dock, there are rules on how long it can be. So if the water's real shallow behind your house, you may not have a dock, you may not be able to build a dock long enough to get out into the deeper water for the type of boat you have. So again, something to check into. Also, if you're going to do some shoreline repairs, build a seawall, something like that, there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of permits, a lot of hoops you're going to have to jump through. So don't think you're just going to buy a lot along the shore of this lake or any other lake and do what you want with the lot. You're going to have to go through some state regulations and things that you're going to have to check into, and it's all going to depend on what you want to do. But the same rules apply here on the lakes. People can use and fish right behind your house, and you do not own out into the water. So be aware of that if you're looking to buy waterfront property here in Montana. So if you're going to buy in a neighborhood here, one of the things you have to think about is the covenants. This neighborhood right here has quite a few covenants, and a lot of people don't like covenants, but covenants are actually a good thing. They keep the values up. They make sure that, you know, you don't put a whole bunch of money into your property and then somebody builds something junky next door or piles garbage next door, whatever it may be. But like this particular neighborhood, they have rules about the types of homes that you can build, the size of the homes that you can build, the style of the homes that you can build. All of that comes into play when you're looking at covenants, and they vary from neighborhood to neighborhood, but a lot of them won't allow businesses or signs because people don't want, you know, cars coming in and out of there every day that don't belong in the neighborhood. So it's things like that. But if you are going to buy in a neighborhood, you need to think about these kind of things and make sure that it works for you. If you're going to buy in a condo complex, they also have covenants, but they also have different rules about nightly and weekly rentals, for example. In our area, a lot of people want something that allows nightly and weekly rentals. And these condos right here, they don't even allow nightly and weekly rentals. It's only long term. So if you're thinking about buying a condo that you're only going to use while you're here and then rent it out the other times of year that you're not here, make sure that you are allowed to do nightly and weekly or short-term rentals. Otherwise, you are going to be stuck with a house that maybe doesn't pencil for you if you're only going to use it a couple times a year. So nightly, weekly is a big deal around here and something you definitely need to check into. But there's other rules in these condo complexes as well. Just like in this subdivision here, a lot of these won't allow businesses, and you know, they restrict the amount of cars you can have there, things like that. So again, if you're going to buy in a condo complex or in a neighborhood, just make sure you check out all the covenants and make sure that whatever you're thinking about doing in the future, it fits into the rules of that particular neighborhood. So you can see all this open land behind me, and what a lot of people think they're going to do when they move up here to Montana is buy a huge chunk and then split it up sell off, you know, buy 40 acres, sell off or split it into 4 10-acre pieces, sell 3 of them, and then their land is paid for. Well, that's a good idea on paper, but what you need to look out for is not all land can be split, and it's going to depend on the zoning, it's going to depend on sometimes the county, whether it's been split before. So if your idea is to come up here and buy a big chunk of open land like you see, it may not work. It may have to be kept at 40 acres or at 20 acres or whatever the zoning may be for that particular property. So keep that in mind if your plan is to buy something and then split it up here. And the last thing you need to know if you're thinking about buying up here is you need to understand our taxes. If you look at the land behind me, and let's just pretend this piece is for sale, you'll look at the taxes and say, oh my God, it's so cheap. I was looking this morning on MLS and there's some 5-acre open pieces of ground where the taxes right now are only $150, $160. But the way the taxes work here is it's based on the value of the land or the value of the improvements on the land. And just the taxes on the land behind me, because this is agricultural, they're going to be a lot less too. So don't get your hopes up when you see the tax bill for a piece of bare land, because it may, well, I shouldn't say it may, it will definitely go up once you put a house on it or a barn or multiple buildings. Whatever you do to it, you're going to be taxed on the value of all the improvements once you do the improvements. So if you're looking at property and you see the taxes are real low, it's because of what I just told you. There's other things too. Sometimes if even a house, you'll see real low taxes. Well, that could be because of veteran. They have deals for veterans here in Montana, which is a great thing. But if you're not a veteran and you buy that piece of property or that house, your taxes are going to go up to what everyone else pays. So again, don't get too excited about the taxes until you check more into it and make sure you know what type of improvements you're going to put on the property, because that's going to have a direct bearing on the amount of tax you pay down the road. And like I said, agricultural taxes are the cheapest. So if you're looking at a big chunk like the one behind me, for example, this one isn't for sale, but if you were looking at one like this, the taxes are going to be super low. And then once you turn it into residential or whatever you're going to do, they're definitely going to go up.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information. And don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.